Hello, White Sox fans, and welcome in to the Sunday Funday edition of the Sox On Tap podcast. It's Tony Marchese alongside Sad Steve today, looking good in the giveaway shirt tonight, Steve, that we got at the ballpark yesterday. It's been an ugly 2 days of White Sox baseball, that's for sure. We're going to talk about all of that in just a minute. Be sure you're following the show at Sox On Tap on Twitter, Steve at NWI_Steve, myself at Tony On Tap. You can join us in the comments sections on the YouTubes. That's youtube.com/OnTapSportsNet. Steve, 1 of 3 to the Marlins. How are you feeling?
Hey, yo, Anthony, I'm not feeling great. Let me just start off by issuing an apology. I would like to apologize to you. I'd like to apologize to the entire Sox On Tap family, all of our loyal listeners, everyone in White Sox Nation. I feel as though I am responsible for losing this series. And I say that because Saturday morning, I woke up and I actually felt a hint of excitement to go to the ballpark and go watch this team. I wasn't overcome by a feeling of dread. And look what happened.
Somebody has to be at fault for these things, Steven. And I'm glad
I'm going to take the heat.
You take the heat on this one.
Fall on the sword here, and
there you go.
I let everybody down, and I apologize for that. I've learned from my mistakes. I'm going to go out there, and I'm committed to being better.
So you got up for the letdown this weekend, Steve. If that's what you're
putting down. It is hashtag confirmed. I did, in fact, get up for the letdown.
Well, it was a very weekend full of White Sox letdowns. Friday was okay. We'll start with Friday's 2-1 ball game, Steve. Dylan Cease on the mound for the White Sox in the opener looked all right, in my opinion. Any comments on how Cease looked on Friday?
I mean, look, he went out there. He gave up 1 run. Put him in a position to win a baseball game. I think he covered six innings that day. So went out there. He met my minimum requirements. Gave up 1 run, and look, they were in position to win that game. And so Luis Robert was able to get the job done in the bottom of the 9th inning after a couple of just really piss poor at bats earlier on in the course of the game. And then he was able to redeem himself to send everybody home happy that night.
Yeah, good baseball game, I would say, for the White Sox, especially they were bouncing off the loss out of New York in game 2 of the doubleheader. Liked to see them bounce back there. You'd already touched on the scoring action in this one. I like that the Sox got out to a rather early lead in the 2nd inning there as well. But overall, I thought that was just a good baseball game. I want to move towards some of the rest of the weekend here real quick, because there's a lot to unpack, I think, from yesterday's ball game, and there's a bit more of it to unpack from today's ball game that are kind of the talking points around this weekend show. This was abysmal baseball, Steve. Abysmal baseball, stuff that we haven't seen in a while. And you talked about something pre-show that we'll touch on with the bullpen. But I don't know if I've been as annoyed this season with a loss than how I walked out of that place yesterday.
Yeah, that was snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, if I've ever seen it. You're up for 24 outs. You're in position to get the job done. And look, Joe Kelly has been throwing the ball well here since May 1st, despite some narratives that you might see on my timeline if you feel so inclined. I know our buddy Voodoo, who's joining us here this evening, he knows exactly what I'm referring to. So if you want to see a real treat and some really entertaining stuff, feel free to go over to my timeline here, because apparently the pitchers, the relievers specifically, have been the problem for this team. Okay. Joe Kelly did not get the job done. He was not throwing strikes out there consistently. And, you look at it, there was one particular at bat where it appears he got squeezed on a ball 4 that allowed the game tying run to get in. The fact of the matter is he shouldn't have put himself in position. He was too erratic in the strike, or excuse me, outside of the strike zone for pretty much the entirety of that inning. And then you just top it off with Tim Anderson. Wait, am I allowed to criticize him?
Yes, you are. On the show,
I'm allowed to criticize Tim Anderson because I know that's a hot button issue on Twitter.com lately.
I've seen some of this.
Yeah, Little League fucking bullshit. This is the third time now in the span of about a month we've seen him fuck up these plays with the infield in on. Let's be real about this. Routine ground balls. And he said it himself. I fucked it up. I rushed the play and I didn't get myself set. And I was trying to make the throw before I had the ball. You have to have the fucking baseball.
Yep, ball first. I don't know how many times that's said on baseball diamonds across America. Ball first, ball first, ball first. I know I drill it into the little leaguers I coach. We've got that problem out there too. It's little league bullshit, just like you said. I mean, this is rudimentary.
But remember, you're not
fundamentals.
allowed to criticize Tim Anderson. If you do, you're a bad fan.
We must be bad fans,
Yeah.
but I would like to open up and talk about these things because that one was just a mental mistake, and you saw another mental mistake in today's baseball game that sort of led to things unravel, not from Tim Anderson, but we're still seeing these April White Sox baseball moments start to creep back in a little bit. And that's what's frustrating about it.
It is. Today was, I think, a collection of different things. Keenan Middleton, who has been absolute nails, hasn't given up a run since April, gives up 2 home runs in that 8th inning. They had this thing set up how they wanted it.
They did.
You're up 5-1 with 6 outs to go. You've got Middleton and Graveman ready to go. Neither one of these guys had given up a run since April. So you had this structured the way you wanted to if you're Pedro Grifol.
Well, that you're talking about today's baseball game, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So they were set up the way that they wanted to be. Keenan Middleton gave up 2 home runs. Look, shit happens, all right? Like I said, he hadn't given up a run since April. Okay? You could almost say he was due for one of these.
I'm pretty sure his ERA still sits at 2.01.
Yeah, exactly. That shows you how good he's been overall. And then, Kendall Graveman, he gives up a home run to Jorge Soler. All of a sudden now you got a 5-4 ball game, and things really just unraveled from there. One of the things that we can look at here with all of this is they get 2 outs in this inning here. You've got, the runners on first and second, and the ball hit down the line past Yoan Moncada. I did see some debate going back and forth from James Fegan of The Athletic, because people were questioning the positioning of Moncada, why he wasn't guarding the line.
I believe even Ozzie Guillen was on this topic in the post-game show afterwards.
And I look at it like this, Fegan's kind of response to some of the replies in his mention was, I don't understand guarding the line when a single ties the game. But the problem is that ball gets by you into the corner. The 2 runs scored. That's what you need to be preventing in that situation.
And that's what happened.
If you give up a base hit and the game's tied, you at least still theoretically have a chance to get out of the inning tied at worst. So that right there was a very questionable, and honestly, if we're being real about this, if there's something to criticize Pedro Grifol and the coaching staff for, it's that.
Yep.
Right there. Because that allowed, the key pivotal runs to score in that inning right there. That turned the complexion around. Then obviously the Marlins added on here to get a 5-1 win. The bullpen just came unraveled here today. That shit's gonna happen. And I think, and I talked about this on my timeline earlier, to me, these last couple of days could be the signs of a cumulative effect of a bullpen having to pitch under duress as much as they have this season with no margin for error, because we have an offense that consistently cannot go out there and put runs on the board and give these pitchers margin for error and room to breathe. I know this isn't something that can be quantified. I know you and Jonathan like to make jokes about, you can't see stuff on Fangraphs. And the fact of the matter is, not all pitches are the same. They're just not. When you are having to pitch under duress, when you are pitching with runners in scoring position constantly, when you are having to pitch with no margin for error and a one-run lead, those pitches take a toll on you more than if you are pitching with a 10-1 lead in the 7th inning. So these things, and the fact that this offense has been piss poor, if you look just up and down categories and statistical areas across Major League Baseball, this is a bottom 5 to 8 offense in the sport. So they're not giving their pitchers any room for error there, making every single pitch that much more magnified. And this is how bullpens get stressed out and lead to problems later on in the season. And this weekend could have been an example of that, honestly.
Yeah, I can buy into that a little bit. I mean, you look at Middleton, Graveman, both of those guys had a long streak of not giving up anything. And it's going to happen at some point. The floodgate's going to open. It's going to happen probably in this type of fashion where it affects multiple guys on their turn through. It's the missed opportunities to turn plays behind them by the defense. It's the ill-timed catcher's interference that puts a runner on base in an at-bat that probably should have resulted in an out. There's a lot of those little things that sneak up and bite you. And if you just played a little bit cleaner, one of those plays, one of those things changes within that inning, Steve, and we're probably talking about another series win. That's what's so frustrating about it. The offense did its job today. In fact, they added on runs. We always ask for insurance runs. They get those today via Luis Robert. Then it all goes down the drain. I know these types of ball games happen. Pedro Grifol said to flush this one. I'm sure we probably can if the Sox continue to win series, the next series. But this is another one where one of those ball games, whether it was today or yesterday, just went your way. That's more ground back towards that 500 mark. That's more ground in this division. You had tons of opportunities. You had late leads that were not able to finish on. And that's back-to-back days on a weekend. That's a really great way to upset an entire fan base through a weekend. And then throw some really wonderful injury news on top of that, Steve. I don't know if you want to talk about this one. Yeah. Liam Hendriks, if you haven't heard, is now on the IL with right elbow inflammation. And we've heard about this in the past with Liam. I mean, last year there was some forearm, a forearm strain, they called it officially last year.
Yeah.
And Liam did speak on having a damaged, the UCL is already damaged, and he knew about that in Oakland. The effects of, and I can't correlate anything, Steve. I don't know if we can talk to one of your doctor friends out there somewhere about this topic in particular, but could rushing him back have caused more damage on the arm based on the medical treatments he was undergoing? I don't know. I asked a question yesterday, where is Liam Hendriks, when we were in the ballpark? I put that on my timeline because I honestly wanted to know. Had already pitched in back-to-back games. He was already seemingly back in the ninth. A one-run ball game is a fair question to ask if your closer is available or not. And obviously, the answer that we have now, as he was placed on the IL today, is he's got something going on with his elbow. I don't like hearing that. Not one bit. I don't like hearing that at all. I don't think any White Sox fan wants to hear that, because when you start to talk about forearm, elbow, all these different concerns with a pitcher, and one is important to this bullpen, who Steve had just talked about having to pitch most of this season. He was supposed to come back at some point if he was able to get through this battle, which he did accomplish, and he was supposed to be the one that takes that stress off of it. Take the stress off of a Joe Kelly, take the stress off of a Kendall Graveman, who've carried that load for the whole first portion of this season, minus maybe a week. This is not good news, Steve. I don't like it one bit.
No, it's really bad news, in fact. And if you have enough time to kind of scroll through some stuff on twitter.com, you can see some things from some people that have been right on occasion, that lead you to believe that there is a lot of concern about this situation with Liam Hendriks. And, we don't really want to speculate on that, but you can draw your own conclusions. Hopefully it's not the case. That's all we can say. And as far as the correlation to, his cancer treatment and potentially rushing back too soon, there's not really a good way to know. I thought it was interesting that Lawyer Boy came out, and that was one of the first things that he talked about here today in his press release. So it does raise some questions, I think. Maybe I could get good friend of the show, Dr. Nirav Shah, on the phone here to have a conversation with him and see what his thoughts are. I've got some other upper extremity physicians I work with that I can have a conversation with and see, if maybe the treatments that he was undergoing could have, weakened his body to the point, and then just trying to ramp up simply too quickly, if that could have put additional strain on that UCL to the point where it's in the position that we are in right now. That's, On Tap Sportsnet investigates, as they say.
I would say that some of this is probably stemming from the issues that he had in the arm already. I don't think the missed spring training and the treatments that he underwent helped any of this, not by any stretch of the imagination. But the fact that we're here so closely after this ramp up period leads me to believe that something like that is pretty plausible, and that this sort of didn't go the way that we wanted it to. I think it came from either Fegan or maybe it was Merkin, something about how Pedro Grifol had walked past his locker, and they asked him how his arm felt, and he said, "We'll see tomorrow," and that he was sort of tipped off that something was wrong just based on Liam's demeanor and how he would typically handle a question like that. That has to be something. The way I sort of read this between the lines is they've known that arm is on borrowed time for the entire tenure of Liam's White Sox career. Does it not? Especially with what it lent to last season, the time on the IL.
I don't necessarily know that I want to say that. I mean, I think if they really had that strong of a concern about it at the time of the signing, I feel like there would have been some provisions put into the contract to provide the team a level of protection. We all know that he who shall not be named is very good when it comes to contracts. So I feel like, again, if that was a major concern, that there would have been some provisions input into the contract and that it would have been leaked out, especially given what we saw this past winter with the whole Carlos Correa saga.
Right.
These things are not really being kept under wraps very much anymore. So I don't necessarily know that I feel that it was something that they had concern about going into this at the beginning of his Sox tenure, but it just stinks. Just fucking stinks.
Yeah, I'm very concerned just because I don't know. It's not good mojo going into this next stretch of baseball here when you've got losses to Joe Kelly and Kendall Graveman on back-to-back days, as Liam Hendricks is now unavailable until who knows when. Yeah, it's concerning. Very, very, very concerned about this situation, Steve.
Yeah, it's not the position that you want to be in, especially because the bullpen has really been a strength for this team since they got into the month of May. You're going to have a couple of hiccups here and there. Obviously, the series in Detroit, Kelly had the back-to-back bad outings there, coughing up late leads. Look, that stuff happens over the course of a 162 game season, like you talked about earlier. And the fact of the matter is, if this team was 8 or 9 games above 500, would it be annoying as hell to see these 2 games slip away the way they have? Yeah, but you would just kind of chalk it up as, it's 2 games of 162. But because of the fact that they dug themselves the hole that they had, the inconsistent play in all facets of the game, it's just magnified that much more. And I think that's what gets the whole collective fan base and the collective psyche of everybody that follows this team on a day in and day out basis in such a negative space.
I couldn't agree more with that. Any other thoughts on this weekend in White Sox baseball, or do you want to move on and preview this LA Dodgers series that's going to be?
I think, all I can really say to kind of put a bow on this weekend here is you had a chance to go out there and you let 2 games slip away. I mean, the fact of the matter is you could have gotten on that plane 5 games under 500. They had a real opportunity to do that. And now here they are sitting 9 games under. And you got to go out west now to face the Dodgers and the Mariners. Now, the Dodgers are struggling right now. So there's 2 ways to look at this. One way you can look at this is you're getting them at the right time because they're not playing well. They're a little bit down. They're a little bit banged up themselves in a couple of different areas. The other way that you can look at this is they're going to come in there pissed off because they got to fly cross country. They got to come from Philly where they had a pretty bad weekend themselves. And I think we can all agree that is a much more talented team than the White Sox. So if you have a team that is more talented, that is pissed off because they're not getting the job done the way they feel like they should be, they're being challenged by an upstart Arizona Diamondbacks, tip the cap to the Fever.
Yes. Shout out Brian.
That team and that group in there, that's a group of winners. We talk all the time about the White Sox being an organization that doesn't have a winning culture. Well, guess what? You're going to face one that does. You're going to face a team that expects to win every single night. And they haven't been doing it lately. And it's only a matter of time until that switch gets flipped. You just better hope that it doesn't get flipped until Friday.
One would hope. We've got an off day tomorrow. And then Tuesday, it looks like it will be Lance Lynn on the mound against Gonsolin. It's going to be a real epically massive task for Lance. I thought he got through the New York game fairly okay. He had some help. I think that LA's lineup is going to be a lot deeper than what he had to face in New York. That's just my thoughts there, Steven. I believe we go to Mike Clevenger after that, and then it'll be Dylan Cease on Thursday. I'm just sort of looking at this. Maybe you do steal this first one in LA, and then they sort of split up the last 2 some way, shape, or form. Because, as we've said before, it's not who you play, it's when you play them. I don't know, though. We're going into this sort of banged up as well. It'll be interesting to see if Eloy Jimenez makes his return or not. That should have some sort of impact on this. If he's not making his return for this series, I don't know why an IL stint was not on the table. Would have been nice to have at least another bat or just glove out there to throw into the outfield if we needed it. We'll see what happens there. I don't know. I think the White Sox do get one, at least one in LA. I'd like to see him get the second one. I don't have really great feelings against Kershaw, though, for some reason.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm absolutely terrified of these 3 games coming up here, particularly on Tuesday. You mentioned Lance getting the ball, and we got to be real about this. He's been dog shit. He gave up the 5 runs against that Yankees team, and that team is not the offensive force that he's going to see in Dodger Stadium on Tuesday. JD Martinez is back to being a guy that is destroying the baseball. You got Mookie Betts at the top of the order, Josh Outman doing his job, Freddie Freeman, continuing his Hall of Fame trajectory, Will Smith, just up and down that lineup right now. They've got guys that can hammer you. And Lance, the stuff just isn't what it once was. And that's a real problem right now. So doing that against this Dodgers lineup, I'm going to be honest, I'm very concerned about it. I'm also concerned about, frankly, I'm concerned about Dylan Cease and Mike Clevenger, because the one thing about this Dodgers lineup is
they are a lot of Clevenger.
They are remarkably patient. They will wait you out more than just about any other team in the National League. You might get through that order one time unscathed, but they are going to make you work. It's going to be kind of the polar opposites of what you're going to see from the White Sox lineup here. You're going to see 2 contrasting styles here, and I've watched enough Dodger games this year that it's almost like they're not playing the same sport as the Sox are when they're in the batter's box, and it's a terrifying notion here, especially for guys like Lance Lynn, Mike Clevenger, and even Dylan Cease, who we've talked about and I've said on numerous occasions is very inefficient with his.
Stop wasting pitches.
Mm-hmm. This is not a team to do that against, and this is the type of situation where you could see Dylan Cease at 95 pitches through 4 innings, which would be a real bad situation.
Let's avoid that. I agree. I don't want to do that. Let's avoid that. There's still an opportunity for them to, not go down that path. You got to pick to click in Tuesday's baseball game, Steven.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Luis Robert Jr. I think this will be his first experience at Dodger Stadium. Hopefully this is the first of 2. No, never mind. All-Star game is not in Dodger Stadium. It's in Seattle, where he's going to be this weekend. So I'm getting ahead of myself here. But I think that Luis Robert Jr., Hollywood, the bright lights, I think he puts one in the seats.
There you go. I'm going to go with Jake Berger because I think that he should be, sort of on the same West Coast trip plan as Luis Robert is this season. He's probably going to have to fly to Seattle with Robert Jr. So I'm going to go with Berger. He's already got a home run off Gonsolin. I believe that came – I forget when that came. Did it come last year? Yeah, it had to have. So I'm going to go with Jake Berger. He's seen the ball well off of him. 1 home run. He's batting 1,000 off of him in 2 at-bats. I think that's a good precursor. I don't know about you. Nobody else on this team has homered against him before. So I'm going to try and take the sure bet here and go with Mr. Jake Berger.
All right. Well, let's roll with it.
We're going to have to. This is going to be, man. Late night games. Might be around for some late night Sox on Taps here. Steven, any final thoughts on this fine Sunday?
Just disappointing. Like I said, was finally starting to not feel terrible about this team. They were starting to build a little bit of momentum coming out of that Yankees series right there. And, got up for the letdown. And I apologize.
It'll happen to the best of us. Thank you to all that tuned in to the Sox on Tap Sunday Funday show. Steven, my final thought is I'd like to win another series. That's it. I just want another series win. Will it come in LA? I'm not sure. If it doesn't come then, let's get it done in Seattle. We'll be back with post-game shows throughout the week. They're going to be late ones. Hope you can stay up, Steven. I don't know if we got to talk scheduling after
We
this.
do.
We got to talk some scheduling. That said, it's gonna be a very late weekend, or a late week, I should say, on this this road trip. This is the first one we've had to do all year. That's, I think, a full 9 o'clock slate. Do we even get relief on Thursday?
No, and we've got 2 of these in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. This is going to be fun times, White Sox fans. So they might be losing games while you're already asleep, and you're going to have to wake up to the news. That's always pleasant. Either way, we'll be here in some way, shape, or form to talk about the team. Follow us, youtube.com/OnTapSportsNet. You can follow Steve at NWI_Steve on the Twitter. Myself at Tony on Tap. Follow the show at Sox on Tap. Steven, that's all I've got for today. White Sox forever.
White Sox for life.